Hi, my name is Ben Graham. This is our Organization for Collaboration SPEC Lab video on file types, file names, headers, and annotation. And I'm going to start by simply saying that we do not use the GDoc, GSheets, and GSlides file types in the lab. We've used them some in the past, no more. Right? So for spreadsheets and documents and presentations, we're going to be using Microsoft Office files, right? We're also, of course, using R files, tech files, lots of different data and image file types, but not these GDoc, GSheets, GSlides file types. And the reason we don't use those is that those will not back up on external hard drives. They only live in the cloud. And your work is too important to lose, so we want it backed up in multiple places. Okay. However, the Google Docs, the Google Sheets, these interfaces are really nice for collaborative work because we can have multiple editors in a file simultaneously without creating conflicted copies. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using Microsoft Office file types and often editing them through the Google Docs, Google Sheets interfaces. All right, so whenever you create a new document or a new spreadsheet, create it in Word or Excel, if it's a new presentation, create it in PowerPoint so that it's saved as a docx, an XL, XS, or .pptx file type, right? And remember, you're saving it straight away into the appropriate folder. This is probably going to be in a project folder where your colleagues and future you will know where to find it. And then when you want to work on that file, especially you're working in it later at a time when you think there might be multiple different people in the file at once, what you're going to do is you're going to right click on the file and choose open with Google Docs or open with Google Sheets, open with Google Slides, right? You're going to work on it in that Google interface. So I'll kind of show that here. This is just the Talus task sheet, right? Which is often the type of document will have like 6 people in there at once editing. If I right click, I have this option to open it in Google Sheets, right? And let me just then change what I'm sharing here so that that you can see. And what I have now is I've got an Excel file that is open. Excuse me, is open in the Google online interface, and so I can make edits to this here. Just as I would if it were open in Excel. But if there's 3 different people in the file at once, it's not going to cause us a problem. All right. So. Sometimes we will get some formatting issues when we move back and forth between Office and editing in these Google interfaces. But for now, I think that's a cost we're willing to bear. When we get close to actually giving a presentation or submitting a paper, we'll move to only editing within Microsoft Office and just making sure there's only one editor working on a file at a time. Okay. So we can't do this multiple editors at once in a Google interface for all file types, right? This isn't going to work for R or LaTeX files. So if you're working collaboratively on an R script, just one person working in the file at once. And every time that you go to make edits on it, right, you're going to do a save as, you're going to put your initials and the date and the file type. So we just have multiple versions of this file saved. There's lots of the old ones in the archive. And you're coordinating who's in the file at once via Slack or email with your teammates. Okay, on to file titles. A good file title contains detailed information, right? It should include the project name, specific enough to distinguish it from other projects, the purpose of the file, specific enough to distinguish it from other tasks related to that project, and probably also your initials and the date. So I might title an R script IDC 2019, master data merge, BG, August 20th, 2021, right? IDC 2019 would be the project. Master data merge would be the purpose of the file, and BG August 20th, 2021 lets you know who worked on it last and when they worked on it, right? I say you probably include your initials and the date in the file type because while we always do this for R scripts and tech files, we won't necessarily always do this for Word and Excel docs that are going to be edited a lot by a lot of different folks in that Google online interface. In those cases, you'll want to keep track of who's editing the file, and who and when the edits are happening in the header of the file. So up at that top of the file, you've got this note that says last edited by, name, date, and just sort of don't delete other people's edits, but just bump it up. So there'll be this whole list of like 15 rows of like when people were editing it. Before we go to submit a paper, we can always delete that header, right? But we want to keep that record of who's been in the file working on what. Okay. Headers in general, right? And R scripts and tech files definitely also have headers. R scripts probably have the longest header usually, describing in real detail what the purpose of the file is. Again, sort of past edits in the file so we can track like intellectual property, right? Like often we want to be giving credit to people later for everybody who's worked on something. Those edit by dates are helpful for that. It also lets us know who to ask questions about for past work in the file. And to keep in, we can keep notes there about like, hey, I made X or Y kind of controversial edit. We might need to reverse. I'm the person who made it, ask me about it later. So for an example here, if you're putting together an annotated bibliography, right, later users are going to need to understand what are the scope of the searches you conducted to build that bibliography? What was the purpose of this bibliography in the first place, right? The header of the document is a place where you can keep those notes. So please, please, please write detailed headers in your files to help communicate to others and to future you what that document is all about. All right, so to recap here, if you're creating a new file, first thing, never create it in Google Docs or Sheets or Slides, right? If it's a presentation or a document or a spreadsheet, you're starting that document in Microsoft Office. Okay. Any product you're starting to work on, you're saving it right away to a shared folder. If you really don't know where something goes, right? We talked about that temporary work product folder in your team folder in SPEC for everyone. You can start the file there and then talk to your team lead or PI about where to move that. Never, never, never work on a file that's located just on your desktop or some other location that's visible only to you. Always work in a shared folder. All right, if you're not starting a file, but you're editing an existing file, right? If it's an R script or a tech file, you're doing a save as, right? So you're opening up the old file, and the first thing you do before you start to make any edits, do a save as, you put your initials and the current date in the file title, and then you start making your edits. You also, the first edit you make, right, is updating the header at the top of the script. Again, with your initials, the date, and what edits you're kind of planning to make. I also recommend doing a save as for Word or Excel if you're about to make large changes, right? Or if you're about to do a bunch of things that you know might need to be reversed and you want to make sure that there's a nice, clean copy of the old version saved, right? It's possible to go back through the version history in Google Docs and stuff, but it's really kind of a pain. So the save as and having an alternate old copy is a really nice thing to do. All right. Once you've done your save as, you've got that new version of the file, you're going to move the old version of the R script, the tech file, whatever, to that archive folder, right? We're keeping our folders decluttered and we're never deleting anything. You don't delete the old version, you archive. If you're opening up a Word file in a Google interface, right, you're not going to be doing the save as probably, but especially if you're just making minor edits, but you do want to go into that file header, add your name, the dates of your edits. Okay. And then lastly, we haven't talked about annotation yet. This mostly applies to R scripts, but in general, we want to be making lots of notes about what we're doing and why. In R scripts, we generally want more words of annotation than lines of actual code, right? As a general principle, we want to carefully document why we make the choices we make on our projects, both for our collaborators and for our future selves. All right, that's it for today. Thanks very much for being with me.